Physical activity and exercise are absolutely great for the gut microbiome. So if you want to actually fix up your gut microbiome, make sure you get plenty and enough physical activity and exercise. But also, a healthy gut microbiome is critical for exercise and physical activity performance. So it's a two-way street. By improving the gut microbiome actually improves exercise performance. So let me show you some of the ways that it works. And this is the kind of last 5 to 10 years of research that's come out. And what's interesting is that when you do some form of physical activity, it alters the gut microbiome, the biodiversity of it, in particular, an improvement in the good species. Now, what's interesting here is also, depending on the different type of training you do, alters it, but in a positive way. Unless you do too much. And if you do too much, it can actually end up going a little bit too far and doing it the wrong way around. So, but we'll talk a little bit about that later. And it shows that weight trainers have a different gut microbiome than endurance athletes who have a difference to sports-specific ones like rugby or cycling. So there are all these differences that they create, but ultimately they all end up being more positive. So that physical activity alters that gut microbiome, increases the beneficial species. So you end up with more of one's called Akkermansia. Now that's the one that is particularly good for insulin resistance and diabetes. So hence you can see already how it's going to have an impact. Bifidobacterium and lactobacillus are the two that you see in all the yogurts and the probiotics. And these are the two really good indicators of a group of bacteria that are incredibly beneficial. They do so many good things in our gut and as a result in our body. It also decreases, physical activity decreases one in particular called Clostridia difficile, which is the renowned one that causes diarrhea in hospitals, and people can literally die from it. And that's not the case, your situation, but what you want to do is keep it in check and keep the numbers down, and exercise helps do that. Now, as a result of that change in the gut microbiome and the other things that are going on metabolically, you end up with the equivalent of what's called a lean subject gut. So if you're a fairly lean person, you don't have extra fat on you and so on, you've got a particular gut microbiome, which I've pretty well described up here. But if you exercise and you're overweight, or if you're physically active and overweight, it still creates this lean subject gut microbiome. One that's tending, if you were to compare it, the microbiome to a lean people, fairly skinny people, to overweight or obese people, it still appears to be the same. So exercise, in a sense, almost overrides the role of Western diet. Now, I'm not suggesting you do the Western diet here, all the junk foods and the trash and so on, because they alter it in a different way. However, it creates the lean subject's a microbiome, even if you're overweight. It also alters fat metabolism, which everybody knows, but it changes your body fat composition. And so these microbiome, this microbiome group in here literally change the body fat, they change the energy metabolism, so you've got more energy to do what you need to do. And one of the ways they do that is they actually improve what's called lactate metabolism. Lactate is an outcome of too much or exercise, I should say, not too much, but exercise. And as a result, that lactate can become a bit of a problem and cause cramps in the muscles and so on. But when you are physically active, the microbiome changes, so it changes the lactate into short-chain fatty acids, which your body can use as energy. So it starts to become more energy efficient by the exercise altering the microbiome to become more energy efficient, and we'll see the benefits on exercise in a moment. It improves amino acid production. So the amino acids are everything from our neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine, all of those things that keep us functioning and happy and active and motivated. It changes those short-chain fatty acids. It increases short-chain fatty acids. These are one in particular, one called butyrate, and this has so many anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, all these negative diseases and chronic diseases, everything from gout right through to Alzheimer's. Butyrate has an impact on reducing the risk of that. So the exercise, you can see how exercise has those benefits, because obviously exercise reduces the risk of Alzheimer's and these other conditions, and it does it this way through butyrate. It increases nutrition because when you exercise the right amount, not too much, remember, and some people are saying, well, is too much 10 minutes a day? No, it's not. We're talking about the elite athletes who are training 5 and 6 hard hours a day. Then they can go the other way, and we'll talk about, I guess, I said a little bit later. But it improves nutrition in terms of digestion and absorption. So when you're creating the healthy microbiome are then able to improve digestion. They're able to break down a lot more of the foods. They're able to change the polyphenols, like your all the big plant foods you get, like eating green tea and turmeric, you've been told are so good. Now, I've covered this in so many of my other videos, please. So I'm not going to go into too much detail of it. So please subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, because I'm going to be putting up so much more of this information. And it enables you to understand it all and see how important that gut microbiome and health and wellness, physical activity and all those things interplay together. So we've got increased digestion and absorption of nutrients as a result of the exercise altering the microbiome to cause this. It increases your immune function, so you're less likely to get infections, and we'll see that. Decreases inflammation. Inflammation is the cornerstone of all our illnesses, from cancer to cardiovascular disease to gout, Alzheimer's, diabetes. They're all inflammatory and inflammatory related. So if we can decrease that, hence why exercise is so beneficial in so many areas. It decreases inflammation, decreases oxidation, decreases endotoxemia. In other words, it's decreasing the amount of toxins in your gut. So anybody out there with gut issues, one of the first things you need to be doing is getting some exercise, getting some physical activity. It doesn't matter. Already, there's research, basically it shows that 20 minutes a day, 3 or 4 or 5 days a week, or 30 minutes of more, any form of activity is going to improve it. And the more you do, again, up to that professional point, is going to be beneficial for your gut microbiome. So if you've got a gut issue, start fixing it, not just with the probiotics, but also fix it with your physical activity. Then you've got endotoxemia, bile metabolism. It alters the way that bile literally comes from your liver to the gallbladder and then injected into your small intestine. And it's like a soap, and it emulsifies fats. So this goes back up here, and it alters the fat metabolism to make that energy more efficient for you. And as a result, also improving your gut health, because bile controls the level of certain microorganisms in your small intestine. And a lot of people have what's called SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. And bile helps control that. So again, I have another video totally on all of these related gut issues. So if you've had any gut issues, make sure you check out the videos on YouTube and subscribe below. Fungal growth, Candida, for example, a little bit of exercise, because of all these beneficial things, it's actually reducing the risk of and or severity of Candida and fungal growth. And of course, we all know that physical activity decreases transit time. That is everything going through. So one of the first things I always talk about, and this is so common, is when you're constipated, you don't want to move, but by moving around, it really does help with that transit time and eliminate problems like constipation. It's only one of the many factors that we talk about in our videos. So we've got all of these changes going on to the gut, but that also feeds back into the sports athlete, into a person out there saying, well, what's the benefit in terms of this? So we know that the gut then, because of all this going on here, increases your mood and motivation. And one of those reasons is something called dopamine, a neurotransmitter. So exercise creates the change in the gut microbiome, which then changes the amino acid production. Gets complex, doesn't it? And then you produce more dopamine, and dopamine is the motivator. Dopamine is the thing that gets you going and the drive, and that's a dopamine hit when you have a big smile, someone comes in and you feel really good about something and motivated. That's a dopamine hit. So if we've got the dopamine hit going, then we've got a decreased recovery time and a decrease in muscle fatigue as a result of the microbiome. That's pretty cool, isn't it? So the gut microbiome, the positive gut microbiome, improves your recovery from exercise. So again, it's really important for athletes to understand the role of this. Increased energy availability. So for the endurance athletes, the ability to be able to go that little bit further, faster. For those weight trainers, to be able to just push that little bit extra at the weights and so on. Increase VO2 max, which is your maximum breathing capacity. So again, for any athlete, you would know what that is. You want to get the oxygen into your cells. You want to be able to get it in there. And these microbiome change it. They change the steroidal hormones. So they alter your balance of hormones, everything from estrogen, progesterone, ladies, testosterone, guys. All of these things are altered as a result of the change in the microbiome. And then finally, this is something we're all interested in, a decrease in infections. In particular, well, gut infections, but in particular for the athlete, the upper respiratory tract infections, URTIs. So these URTIs, the upper respiratory tract infections, are very common. And the more elite you are, the more training you're doing, the more likely you are to have respiratory tract infections. So this is how that all plays out. So the next question is, how do we alter this in a positive way? We'll get the physical activity. Can we alter the gut? And the answer is yes, through probiotics. So where do probiotics fit in with physical activity and exercise? The early studies showed that it was a bit equivocal. There was some benefit, but it wasn't great in other studies. The more recent, overwhelming consensus is that probiotics have a definite positive outcome on exercise and physical activity outcomes. And it starts off with looking, and this is where they've done clinical trials of people who are doing exercise and another group exercising, and they're giving these probiotics, and this group here is getting the placebo. Then they've also done it with the mice and the treadmills and the rats and all the lab studies. So the evidence now is very, very convincing, the benefits of it for exercise. And the first thing it shows is that when you take probiotics and do the exercise, it increases your body composition and lean mass compared to if you're just doing the exercise. So we know that it's probiotics. It increases testosterone and decreases cortisol. So from that biochemical perspective, testosterone is obviously what you want in the sport. Cortisol is better known as the stress hormone. So the balance there is you wanted to move towards testosterone and lower your cortisol. It decreases exercise-induced lactate, and lactate is what will often give you the muscle burn. And one of the reasons for that, it improves in terms of the metabolism, which I've already shown you a little bit earlier, the metabolism of the lactate, so it's converted into a form of energy, which is a win-win situation. It increases neurotransmitter synthesis, one in particular called choline, and choline is linked in with basically all your nerves transmission around the body. And so any improvement in that area means you're going to get perhaps faster reaction times and so on, perhaps better muscle coordination, lots of possibilities there. But it also been shown to improve cognition, mood and motivation, and that would probably be through the literally the increased production of dopamine, which is the motivational hormone neurotransmitter. And so you've got increase in immune function. In particular, it shows a decrease in URTIs, which is your upper respiratory tract infections. And if you're an athlete working really hard, doing lots and lots of training, especially those people doing overtraining, the professional elite athletes, then you're at much greater risk of upper respiratory tract infections. And the studies show that it reduces them by about 25 to 26 to 27%. And that's fairly consistent in the numbers there. And as well as that, it also reduces the gut issues. If you are overtraining, then you probably tend to have higher levels of gut issues. I used to find out with my talks, traveling around the country, elite athletes would come to my talk on gut health, and they would say, hey, what's going on here? And I'd explain to them, it leads to something called leaky gut and leads to an increase in the risk of everything from cramping, gut cramping, diarrhea, all of those, reflux, basically all of the gut related issues can be a part of that overtraining symptom. So it leads to a reduction in that. So taking probiotics has a very positive role on reducing those infections because it has both an antibiotic and an antiviral effect. And then finally, it increases nutrition by improving digestion. And as a result, in particular, something like improving protein digestion. So if you're getting better digestion, you're getting more efficient use of all the nutrients you're taking in. It also increases all of the other nutrients like the polyphenols. These are the antioxidants, but they're used around the body for lots of functions in there. So mineral absorption, mineral digestion. So exercise is improved as a result of the increased digestion brought about by probiotics. Then you've got, how does that then translate to actual real life? And the study showed that it leads to a decrease in fatigue. So if you take probiotics, it leads to a decrease in fatigue and an increase in your endurance capacity, increased power, and improve muscle mass. So these are all win-wins. So you can see some of the ways that it does it over there. It increases recovery ability and it decreases soreness, exercise-induced muscle damage. So again, helping with recovery. And finally, it improves mood and motivation, again, through that dopamine link. So you can see the positive role probiotics have on what it does and the outcomes of it in terms of the athlete. So for any athlete out there, it's a pretty well no-brainer. However, we get to the final part of that is, okay, so what does it mean? Well, the first early research was done on usually a single strain, and they didn't get many very positive results, as I mentioned earlier. But what they do find now is when a multi-strain, so at least two, doesn't have to be any more than two or three, doesn't have to be 25 or anything like that, but multi-strain appear to have a much better outcome. Now, we've found that in lots of studies to do with other areas of health, to do with diabetes and to do with Alzheimer's and a whole raft of other conditions. So multi-strain and dose dependent. In other words, taking one every couple of days or every week isn't probably going to really improve it. It's about taking a supplement, and you can compare the levels. It's in something called CFU, colony forming units, and you can compare each of the probiotics, which one's got the strongest. And so it's a dose dependent result. And also you find that it's something that you take during. If you stop, then you tend to lose that benefit fairly rapidly. So the actual benefit is taken during. So what are the probiotics that show up in the research? The three main ones that come up are lactobacillus, which is a very common one. That's the one you get in yogurts and most of your probiotics. And there are lots of strains in there, and there's not enough room here to show all the strains. There's about 10, 15 strains that showed up positively. The common ones that you find in probiotics, bifidobacterium, which is another one you find in your yogurt and probiotic supplements, so you can get those easily. And the third one that's shown up on the block is a little bit of a latecomer, is Bacillus coagulans. And Bacillus coagulans is a soil-based bacteria actually, and it's been shown to have lots of benefits across the board in terms of reflux, like these other two, across the board in terms of general health, and obviously here in terms of physical activity. So the answer is, looking after your gut can have a big impact on exercise, and exercise and physical activity can have a big impact on looking after your gut, and this can all be enhanced by taking probiotics. What a great idea. Make sure you subscribe below and share this information.